Okay, page 288, verse 67 of Surah 39. وَالْأَرْضُ جَمِيعًا قَبْضَتُهُ يَوْمَ الْقِيَامَةِ. And on the day of resurrection, the whole of the earth will be grasped by his hand, and the heavens will be rolled up in his right hand. Quite funny that it says his hand, and here his right hand, all in capitals. And anyway, the hadith we have is the Messenger of Allah saying, Allah will grasp the whole of planet Earth by his hand and roll all the heavens up with his right hand, and he will say, I am the king, where are the kings of the earth? How does that help us understand this verse? This, for many people, it's allegorical. And does God have a hand? How can God grasp the whole of the earth in his hand and roll up the heavens in the other? What does that mean? The hadith doesn't help us. It basically repeats what the verse says and adds something towards the end. The next verse, وَنُفِخَ فِي الصُّورِ, and the trumpet will be blown, and all in the heavens and all who are on earth will swoon away except him who Allah wills. What does that mean? Can we have some sort of a better vision of what will happen? All we have is the Prophet says, I will be the first to raise my head after the second blowing of the trumpet, and will see Musa holding or clinging to the throne of Allah, and I will not know whether he had been in that state all the time or after the blowing of the trumpet. Okay, what relevance is that? I'm not sure. Moving further down, page 399, chapter 94 of the Quran. What do we have underneath it? Nothing, no narrations. And the next surah 95, no narrations again, except for this, which says, while the Prophet was on a journey, he recited Surah At-Teen, Surah 95, in one of the first two rakat of Al-Isha prayer. That's it. Now, is that an explanation? Clarification? I don't think so. Okay, page 408, Surah 100, Al-Zariyat, no narrations. Surah 101, no narrations. Surah 102, no narrations except for Ibn Abbas telling us that takathur means piling up money and children. Takathur just comes from kathura, which means many. Surah 103, no narrations. Surah 104, again no narrations. Even here, this is not a narration. This is just, it seems to be from Imam Bukhari himself telling us what he thinks all this means. Surah 105, no narrations. Surah Quraysh, no narrations. Surah Al-Ma'mun, 107, no narrations. Until we get to Surah Al-Kawthar, we have narrations because, of course, Al-Kawthar is considered to be a river or a pond in paradise that Allah gave to the Prophet. So we can consider this to be an explanation. We can give this hadith a pass, if you like, that it tells us what something in the Quran actually means. It clarifies something, it explains something. A little bit further down, Surah 109, no narrations. Surah An-Nasr. Now this is very interesting. We have a lot of narrations here, and you will see why I think it's very interesting. The first narrations are just basically Aisha saying that once this chapter was revealed to the Prophet, he used to always make this dua in his prayer. So we've got this narration of Aisha and another one of Aisha basically saying the same thing, that the Prophet used to make this dua, which most of us make, I think, Subhanakallahumma Rabbana wa bihamdika Allahumma ighfir li, in his prayer after this chapter was revealed. But the next narrations are basically Umar ibn Khattab asking people about this chapter of the Quran. So he's asking people, and it's Ibn Abbas who gives the answer. So we have this hadith, the longer version, the better version is the one over here. Now look at this. Ibn Abbas says, Umar used to make me sit with the elderly men who had fought in the Battle of Badr. Some of them felt it, they didn't like it, and said to Umar, why do you bring in this boy to sit with us while we have sons liking? And Umar replied, because of what you know of his position. Really in Arabic it says, because of what you know of where he comes from, which is he's from the family of the Prophet. But because both Bukhari and the Salafis who translated this are both slightly anti-Alawi, anti-Shia, That's how they've translated that. That's because of Ibn Abbas's knowledge, which is true also. In any case, one day Umar called me and he made me sit in the gathering. This is Ibn Abbas saying this. And I think that he called me just to show them, i.e. my religious knowledge. Umar then asked him about this verse. What do you say about the interpretation of the statement of Allah, when there comes the help of Allah to you, O Muhammad, against your enemies, and the conquest? So this verse, this chapter of the Quran. And remember, these are the elderly people from the people who fought at Badr, and Umar ibn Khattab himself. So they all start saying what they think it means. Now, if the Prophet had explained this, shouldn't they all just know? Why are they sitting there discussing it? And some of them say this, some of them say something else. In the end, Umar asks me, do you say the same, O Ibn Abbas? And he says no. So Ibn Abbas, the young boy, is saying something different to what all of the elderly people of Badr were saying. And this tells you something about Ibn Abbas and his tefsir of the Quran, that it wasn't from knowledge acquired, because Ibn Abbas, don't forget, he was a young boy when the Prophet passed away. And he went around learning knowledge from some of the elderly companions. Okay, well now he's correcting the elderly companions. So this knowledge he is saying here is not coming from the elderly companions. It's his own insight into the Quran. Okay, which is what we are supposed to have anyway. Point is that a lot of people like to equate the Ibn Abbas, his tafsir is from the Prophet. His explanations of the Quran are all directly from the Prophet. Well, no, not necessarily so. So Ibn Abbas tells them the real explanation of this chapter, which is basically the time limit of the life of the Messenger of Allah. You know, إِذَا جَاءَ نَصْرُ اللَّهِ, when the conquest comes to you, basically after that, you are going to shortly pass away, O Muhammad, because everything has been fulfilled. So that's a very interesting one, where they're all sitting there arguing and debating over something which they should have all had the explanation numerous times from the Messenger of Allah. Well, not numerous times, because it's one of the last chapters of the Quran to be revealed. Nevertheless, the Prophet did not apparently explain it to them. Okay, the last thing I want to show you is the last two chapters, about the last two chapters of the Quran. And it's actually bringing up the controversy of some of the companions who used to believe that the last two surahs of the Quran do not belong in the Quran. They are not part of the Quran. And Imam Bukhari has one hadith here which says, where Ubay ibn Ka'b says he asked the Prophet about them, and I asked the Prophet about them, and he said, these two surahs have been recited to me, i.e. they are part of the Quran. The actual Arabic is very cryptic. In any case, the next narration is all about Ibn Mas'ud, basically. So somebody says, I asked Ubay ibn Ka'b, O Abu al-Munzir, your brother Ibn Mas'ud said so-and-so, i.e. the two Mu'awwidhatayn, the last two chapters of the Quran, are not actually part of the Quran. And Ubay says, no, basically the Prophet said they are part of the Quran. The actual Arabic here is doctored by Imam Bukhari. He says, Ibn Mas'ud says, kada wa kada, so-and-so and so-and-so. The original hadith is that Ibn Mas'ud removes these two chapters from the Quran. So again, this is not helping us to gain clarity about the Quran. Reading hadiths about the companions disputing whether certain chapters should be in the Quran or not. That doesn't bring any clarity, and in any case, it's not from the Prophet, which is, the whole point of this series is to show that there are very little hadiths of the Prophet explained in the Quran.